So this afternoon we're joined by Professor John Paterson from the University of Aberdeen School of Law. Thank you, John, for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks very much indeed.
Now, Turkey is an important country, as you will know, for a number of reasons when it comes to energy generally, but in particular it is a transit country for oil and gas coming from the region, or Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, and the pipelines that supply Europe. It's a huge market with its population of 80 million people, a big market for electricity and gas, and it is also a producer of oil and has recently discovered a large gas field in the Black Sea. On that point, we've worked closely with Turkish Petroleum on training of the people working on the drill ships in the Black Sea, in the Mediterranean, and in that capacity we've met a lot of drilling engineers, drilling supervisors, professionals from oil and gas industry who often turn out to be from Aberdeen. So what is the relationship and what is the history between Aberdeen and the oil and gas industry?
So I'm not surprised that you've come across Aberdeen educated, Aberdeen-based people in the oil and gas industry in Turkey, because anywhere I go in the world in connection with my work, I have the same experience. So basically, oil and gas were discovered in this part of the world in the North Sea back in the 1960s. Gas discoveries in the southern North Sea, but then in the central and northern North Sea, principally oil discoveries. And Aberdeen was ideally located to be a base for the industry in serving especially the central and northern North Sea. So there are long-established links. All the companies have bases here, and not only those sort of well-known companies, the sort of the big ones, but inevitably with such a complex and diverse industry, a lot of the service sector is here as well. So we've got long-standing links going right back to the 1960s and 70s.
So Aberdeen and the university and Scotland generally have well-established links with the energy sector due to the location on the North Sea. How will the students of the law school benefit in a tangible way from the experience of the city and of the university and links it has with the sector?
Yeah, so I think there's a variety of things. Obviously, we've been involved in this sector for a long time, so we've got sort of deep roots and a lot of experience and expertise. We've got quite a large team in oil and gas, and indeed energy and environment generally, because we cover the whole range. And then as a consequence of that, and being based where we are, we've got good links with the local practitioners, those who are on the sort of front line dealing with the industry. And we benefit from that in a variety of ways. So we are often involved in terms of working together in writing. So we are actually producing one of the key textbooks for the subject out of the law school at Aberdeen. And we benefit from being able to involve practitioners in those projects as well. We benefit, of course, also in terms of guest lectures. So we have practitioners who can come and give us their first-hand experience in the classroom. So those are the kind of things that help us a great deal. Yeah.
Yes, and we see that the university, the School of Law in particular, does very well in the various rankings that are available. How do you explain the success of the university, of the School of Law, in achieving those high-ranking places?
Sure, yeah. So obviously, Aberdeen University is one of the ancient universities. So we have a history going back over 525 years now. Law has been taught for a long part of that history. Law was taught right at the beginning, in fact, back in 1495. And we're obviously really pleased that we've got such high rankings at the moment. We're top 10 in all the UK league tables for law. And more recently, of course, there's been a ranking of law schools globally. And we're really pleased that we're in the top 100 of law schools globally. When you think how many law schools there are, that is, a significant achievement. Now, how do we do that? I don't know, because we just do what we do and we try to do our best every day. We are a research-led school. And sometimes that can mean that research takes the priority at the cost to teaching, but we're not like that. We're very much a research-led teaching institution. So the benefit for the students is that they'll be working with faculty, with staff in the law school who are not simply dedicated teachers, but dedicated teachers who are involved in the kind of cutting edge research in their areas of expertise. And we take that very seriously. We do our very best to be accessible as teachers. Even at the moment where we're all working from home, I'm every day speaking to students online, whether teaching or in individual meetings. And when we're on campus, when we're lucky enough to be back on campus, we're at a school that very much adopts an open door policy. And sometimes students coming from other parts of the world are a bit taken aback that you can just sort of walk down the corridor, professor's door is open, you can just tap on the door and come in for a chat. That's absolutely fine, because that's really what we're there for. We're there to develop our students, and that happens in the classroom, it happens in their individual study, but it also happens in more informal discussions as well. So that's kind of our ethos. Now, moving on to the programs that we teach. We've been teaching oil and gas law for quite a long time, but also for many years now, we've been teaching energy and environmental law at the LLM level. And what we're trying to do is recognize that, you know, energy is a complex field. We're clearly going through an energy transition at the moment, and this will be a long-term process. Hydrocarbons will not disappear overnight. We need to move quickly to a point where we are using low carbon alternatives, but we have to be realistic about how we manage that transition. So we maintain our interest in oil and gas, but we do so in the context of recognizing the reality of the transition.
Yes, you mentioned renewable energy, and diversification of energy sources is an important priority for the Turkish Energy Ministry. And students of law will be interested to know how these areas have been incorporated into the LLM programs that you offer.
Absolutely. So we've got a pretty big team of energy lawyers, energy and environmental lawyers at Aberdeen, and we're able to cover, you know, really the whole energy value chain. So for those students who are interested, absolutely, you can study low carbon energy transition, a couple of courses on that. So we cover renewables, we cover nuclear, we look at things like carbon capture and storage. We've also got colleagues working on some of the more cutting edge elements in energy, things like methane hydrates. So really, whatever your interest is in energy, there's an opportunity to learn about it. But equally, if you're particularly interested, to go on perhaps and focus in on something a little bit more specific in the context of a dissertation, for example.
Yeah. Excellent. And you mentioned dissertation. These students following the LLMs in energy law, oil and gas law, have a choice to make between completing a dissertation or a period of professional skills. What are the key differences, and why do students choose one over the other?
Yeah, so students will be aware that traditionally an LLM has been characterized by some talk courses and usually then completed with an extended piece of writing, a dissertation. And over the years, because we've always tried to reflect what it is that students are looking for, but also what the broader market in terms of employers are looking for. And we were getting an increasing requests from students that some of them were very, very keen to do a dissertation for a variety of reasons, to develop their interest in a particular issue, perhaps as preparation for going on to do a PhD, something like that. But others were saying, you know, I don't really want to do that. If I could, I'd take more talk courses. And we thought, well, we could just simply, you know, ramp up the talk courses, but let's try and do something a little bit more sophisticated. So what we did, starting on our international commercial law program, was to pilot the so-called professional skills approach, where we would take the students through intensive exercises, you know, sort of during the same period when others are working on the dissertation, take them through intensive exercises which give them a taste of what some practical issues will look like in the world of work. So in terms of international commercial arbitration, then they would be actually going through a dispute process, you know, all the way from developing the pleadings all the way through an arbitration process. And then in terms, having successfully piloted that, we developed equivalent exercises for other programs, including oil and gas, and indeed energy and environment. So these can change from year to year, but we always involve a mixture of academic and practitioners in these exercises. And they could be things like negotiating a contract. So you'll work in teams and you'll negotiate something like a production sharing agreement. You could be involved in, again, working in groups, developing the materials for a commercial decision, whether or not to farm into a petroleum license. It could be an exercise involving understanding the finances of a potential joint venture partner, something like that, something that would be relevant not only to oil and gas, but also to renewables. It could be an exercise involving the planning dimension of a renewables project. So these are the kinds of things that students can be involved in. And we've run that successfully now for a good number of years, including last year when, of course, we were under COVID restrictions. We had to move it from a campus-based, group team exercise to an online exercise, which actually worked really well. And of course, students and teachers realized that in many respects, this could be a good preparation for the kinds of issues we might face in future if we're dealing with this kind of situation again.
Yes, and the online opportunities of study, of course, are something that we will need to talk about. But for now, I just wanted to ask you about the parallel or different subjects that students may choose, maybe related to energy, but parallel subjects at LLM at the School of Law.
Yeah, so we've obviously, like many law schools, have a program in international commercial law, and I actually myself teach a little bit on that as well. And of course, you can well imagine that whether you're involved in any aspect of energy, commercial law is going to be an important dimension as well. Alongside that, we've got a program in international trade. We've also then got programs in private international law, public international law. So there are a variety of sort of cognate areas where students may well find an interest, depending on exactly what it is they see themselves doing in the future.
Yes, and that brings us nicely to careers and the career aspirations of students who will be looking at likely outcomes once they've completed an LLM at the School of Law.
So we've got a very large graduate cohort because we've been teaching oil and gas law in particular for more than 10 years. Not sure exactly how many, but certainly more than 10. And over the years, that's been quite a big program. And we've been fortunate and privileged really to have students coming from really all over the world. So that's both countries that are really established oil and gas producers, but as the years have gone by, we've also seen students coming from all the emergent oil and gas countries as well. And in many respects, you could look at our cohort through the years and see the kind of movement of the industry across the globe. Now, in terms of where students then end up, well, really, it's an impressive and wide array of positions within the industry. So we've got students working for state oil companies, national oil companies, for the private sector, both for the big multinationals, but then for small specialist companies as well. We've got students who have gone on to work in ministries, so ministries dealing with energy, regulatory bodies, and of course for the law firms who are often serving these large commercial clients, but also government clients as well. So it's really a pretty diverse spread of occupations that our graduates have gone on to, but also some of them to kind of cognate areas. Some have gone into more financial positions. A lot very much depends also on what sort of degree they come to us with, because again, in common with many law schools, when we get to the LLM level, we're very open to the idea that, of course, inevitably a majority of our students will be come with undergraduate degrees in law, but we're also open to other disciplines as well. So it's not unusual for people to come from a kind of business studies background. But equally, we've had extremely successful students who've come from fields as diverse as engineering, political science. Our key concern is, do they have enough of a legal background, whether from their studies or from practical experience, to enable them to perform well on the LLM? But really, our experience is that non-law graduates have done extremely well as well.
Very good. Yes. So finally, we have to ask the question that might be on a lot of people's minds still as we look forward regarding the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. So how are things looking from your point of view in Aberdeen, in the UK, and what are the prospects for on-campus study or online study from September?
So basically, at every point, as you can imagine, we've simply followed the government guidelines and instructions. The most recent communication, if your students were to look on our website, they'll always see the most recent communication coming from the university. We keep everyone up to date. But the most recent one indicates that clearly at the moment in Britain, things are looking a little bit more positive because the vaccine rollout is going pretty well. There are indications in all the 4 constituent nations at the moment that restrictions are easing a little bit, but of course we're still being advised not to drop our guard. In terms of looking forward to September, we're certainly hopeful that by that time we'll be able to offer on-campus teaching again, but we're completely in the hands of, in our case, the Scottish Government as to what will be permitted. But if I can take you back to the autumn semester in last year, then we were able for a period to offer on-campus teaching, which we managed to do successfully, including social distancing, including all the appropriate protections, and that actually worked pretty well. But the great thing was that we were able to flex that. So we could teach students who were able to travel, we could do that successfully, but we could equally deliver the same material to students online who weren't able to travel, and there were occasions then when we would bring all the students together online as well. And we can move back and forward between the two pretty successfully. So even if we were teaching on campus and then things changed, we were ready to kind of move everything online. So we're optimistic, we're hopeful, but we can't offer any guarantees at the moment. We're always going to be guided and instructed by the Scottish Government. But I think what the last year has demonstrated is that there's a huge amount of adaptability and flexibility within the education system. And I think that's been seen really globally. It's really been remarkable how well people have adapted. But we can deal with whatever comes in that respect.
Yes, and you have an existing online delivery of courses from Aberdeen that's been quite successful. So that provides a backup should it be needed.
Very much so, and I think again I've reflected on this as someone who's been involved, both as a teacher and researcher over the years, but also in management roles as well. I think we were fortunate in Aberdeen that we had a really good online delivery experience, but also good online delivery support within the centre of the university. And that meant that, okay, in the law school, we had quite a lot of experience of doing this already, including in our oil and gas program. But for other programs, which had to move online pretty quickly, we had that kind of support and infrastructure behind us, which made life much, much easier. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I miss the classroom. I enjoy the buzz of the classroom, but I think we've adapted pretty well to the online environment, in a kind of 100% way as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, of course, we're all hoping to get back to normal as soon as possible. And it is notable that the UK and in Scotland, you're progressing very quickly with the vaccination program. So let's just hope for the best.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I'm of a sufficient age that I got my vaccine the other day. So it was a real kind of tangible sign that things are moving forward. Yeah.
Yes, that's great. So thank you very much for joining us today. And we'll have some questions from the students this afternoon, and we'll take those now.
Thanks very much indeed. It's a pleasure.